What is up, Steelers Nation? Thank you so much for jumping on to another episode of All Steelers Talk. I'm Noah Strackbine, joined always by my man in the corner, producer Nick Belsky. Find us on youtube.com/All Steelers Talkers. Subscribe anywhere you get your podcast. The Pittsburgh Steelers, they had themselves a weekend. They come back from the Senior Bowl. They finished up the Shrine Bowl earlier in the week. We got some nuggets from both of those. Meanwhile, they know their quarterback, and we were the ones that were told about it. So we're diving into who the Pittsburgh Steelers want and why it comes with one condition. Also, over the weekend, ESPN insider Jeremy Fowler gave some insight on what it's going to cost to sign, grab, and add our favorite free agent wide receiver target. So we'll dive into that as well. It's a good one here in the Berg, a little rainy, but it was a good weekend overall. Anybody in the city of Pittsburgh, got to give a shout out to my sister-in-law. Her artwork is at Kelvin Coffee Lab, I believe it's called, over in East Liberty. Good spot, good coffee, great waffles. If you're a waffle guy, great waffles, good artwork. Go check those bad boys out. How's your weekend? Did you enjoy Pebble Beach, watching Pebble Beach, and how you feel, my friend?
Yeah, when you said, did you enjoy Pebble Beach? I was like, don't get it wrong. I didn't get to go to Pebble Beach. Otherwise, I probably would have called off today. But no, it was a good weekend. And to be completely honest, to go off of what you said, anything I can put syrup on is good. So waffles, pancakes, don't do it on crepes because typically crepes already are loaded with stuff. But, you know, any of that stuff is good on my end. But no, honestly, love watching the Pebble Beach Pro-Am and watched a little bit of the Pro Bowl. Not going to lie. It was a tough watch. I watched a little bit, and there are.
I think Nick froze on us. I believe Nick's gone. All right. Well, with that said, the Pro-Am is a great time. Pebble Beach is fantastic. The Pro Bowl, while we wait for him, the Pro Bowl is a different situation. Look, I enjoyed Patrick Queen talking smack on the Baltimore Ravens. That was a good time. Didn't watch almost any of the competition because, I mean, who really does? Oh, he's back. What's up, Nick?
Can you actually hear me this time, or
I can.
am I still frozen? I was going to say,
no, you're good.
All right, to sum it all up, Pebble Beach, great. Pro Bowl, not great. That's it.
That is actually exactly what I was just saying myself. I don't know. I updated the laptop this weekend. Laptop was going slow on Friday. Figured, all right, let's get it fixed. Took it to Apple. Since then, chaos. Pure. You just never know what's going to happen. So we'll blame that one on my end. But you're right. You're spot on. Didn't watch almost any of the Pro Bowl. Watched a lot of golf. I think the Pro Bowl is behind us. There's just no point in the Pro Bowl. But it is Super Bowl week. Super exciting stuff. We'll ask one more time. Outside of Chris Oladokun, who is your guy this weekend? Who is your favorite former Steeler in the Super Bowl?
Well, the one that I liked the most when he was here was Juju. So I'm going to stick with Juju and Chris Oladokun.
Yeah, I think I agree. I'm rooting Eagles. Juju is my favorite. I gotta root Saquon, man. Juju is yeah. Juju was my favorite when he was here, outside of Chris Oladokun. So shout out. All right, let's dive into it. We're going to start with the Shrine and the Senior Bowl. The Pittsburgh Steelers just got back from the Senior Bowl last weekend. Before that, a couple days before that, they were in the Shrine Bowl or at the Shrine Bowl. They told one guy, don't play. They call it a day after practice. Don't risk injury. We are already looking at you. We love you. Go walk away and hopefully improve your draft stock just from practice alone. I was told that the Pittsburgh Steelers absolutely love two guys, one guy from the Senior Bowl and one guy from the Shrine Bowl. One guy you may know, one guy, I won't lie to you, I had to Google. But they are, quote unquote, both Steelers, and the Pittsburgh Steelers are really hoping that both of them fall their way. We'll start with the one from the Senior Bowl that I don't think a lot of people are going to know. I think it's going to come as a bit of a surprise, but from what I've been told, he was, quote unquote, the most coachable player the Pittsburgh Steelers have ever met in Mobile, Alabama, which is massive. And I was also told that this is one of my favorite quotes, maybe ever, but definitely of the offseason. And we've had some good ones this offseason. That the Pittsburgh Steelers were like an 8th grader watching their first True Love as this guy was on the field. But added to the quote, they were not alone. That is North Dakota State offensive tackle, offensive guard, Gray Zabel, 2-year starter guy who, I mean, you go to North Dakota State, you win championships. That's just what you do in the FCS. A dude who is expected to go in the second round, could sneak his way late into the first, easily becomes a name to watch for the Pittsburgh Steelers at that 20th pick or that 21st pick, and potentially a move up option in the second round if they decide, this is the direction that we're looking to go. Not a lot of people are thinking offensive guard when it comes to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Many of them expect them to go wide receiver, running back, quarterback, corner, defensive line. Offensive line is pretty low on that list, but with Isaac Seumalo entering the final year of his deal and being considered a cut candidate, the Steelers are looking at it saying maybe we could grab the final piece to a young offensive line and develop it, which, to be very honest, I don't think is my first choice, but I'm not upset with the move. I don't think building the trenches is ever the wrong idea. It's not the splashiest. It's not the most exciting. In an offseason where we expected the Pittsburgh Steelers or expect the Pittsburgh Steelers to make plenty of noise, going after an offensive lineman is not something that I had on my bingo card, but it is a name to watch. Gray Zabel is the one that I heard out of the Senior Bowl. They absolutely loved this guy. They think he is a workhorse. They see him as an offensive guard. It is a guy that could come in here and be, I mean, the North Dakota State, South Dakota State offensive guard duo for the Pittsburgh Steelers would be very exciting with Zach Frazier in the middle. At the Shrine Bowl, the name to watch, the name that the Pittsburgh Steelers loved, quote unquote, is a Steeler, is Colorado wide receiver Jimmy Horn Jr., who is a dude who is very much so a sleeper right now. A guy that is overshadowed by Travis Hunter and Shedeur Sanders, obviously, probably Shiloh Sanders as well, coming out of Colorado. A name that right now is expected to go very late in the draft, possibly go undrafted. He's 5'7", maybe 190 pounds soaking wet, is not a big guy at all. Comes in here is essentially just another Calvin Austin, but I mean, the Steelers like what they have in Calvin Austin. A guy that, just to pull up some stats here, in 2 years as a starter for Colorado, caught 95 passes, 1,008 yards, and 3 touchdowns. Had some drop issues. You got to acknowledge that he had some drop issues, but has a ton of upside. The Pittsburgh Steelers don't view him as the missing piece, the guy, the playmaker that they go out there and get. And he is, oh man, this is George Pickens, Jimmy Horn Jr. No, they just simply look at him as a late round addition that has way more upside than his draft value is going to say, and somebody that they are looking into heavily. Convinced him not to play in the Shrine Bowl, which is, that's big. If a team is saying don't play, don't risk injury, go to the combine and see what you can do from there, that's speaking volumes. And Jimmy Horn did so much at the Shrine Bowl that they were very much so in love with the Colorado wide receiver. Gray Zabel, good old North Dakota State offensive guard, and Jimmy Horn out of Colorado. You hear those two names. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's especially interesting that they told Jimmy Horn, hey, just don't play. I think part of that is don't get injured. You've done enough work here. And part of that is we don't know how many of the other 31 teams saw what we saw in practice. Don't give them more on tape, because we want to be, obviously, we know some of those other teams are going to look at that and see the same things, because all NFL scouts kind of think in a similar way. But I think if you're the Steelers saying that, you're saying, hey, let's try to keep you as a hidden gem as long as we can, as much as we possibly can. So I think that is interesting, and obviously a name that I had not been thinking of. So going to keep an eye on him once they go out to Indianapolis and once they go to Colorado's Pro Day to see how many people from the Steelers contingent end up there. And as far as an FCS interior offensive lineman, we got a Jackrabbit, we had a Bison. It makes all the sense in the world. Not only that, but it makes sense that maybe instead of doing the obvious thing, which is, hey, they need a swing tackle next year to go behind Broderick and Troy, maybe you add to that interior offensive line, because let's not forget the fact that Spencer Anderson is very well liked by the Pittsburgh Steelers coaching staff. So it might make sense to say, hey, he ended up having to play every position but center last year. If we fill the middle, then we can move him outside and he can be the true swing tackle. That way you don't have to spend so much in free agency to bring in a veteran. Do I think that that's the best option? No, I still think the Steelers need a veteran option, whether that be as a backup or whether that be as another starter on the interior next year. But I think it's interesting that they're looking at this and saying there's more than one way to kind of solidify this offensive line. And while all of us were saying it's tackle, you need a swing tackle, maybe it is. And maybe there is some credence to saying, hey, let's add to the interior of the offensive line and trust in Spencer Anderson on the outside.
Yeah, and I think that works. You know, in the long run, if the Pittsburgh Steelers are looking at 2025 in a way that nobody's going to be super excited about, but as a, hey, let's build a little bit. Let's stop patching things and build things. And it's worked out. You know, Zach Frazier worked out. Troy Fautanu hopefully works out. You got guys like Jaylen Warren who've worked out. Keanu Benton, Joey Porter worked out. And you're hoping TJ, Alex, Nick Herbig worked out. You have these guys. You've seen this happen before. When you're looking at it, maybe you're going, let's just finish the offensive line. You know, even if Zabel is your last interior offensive lineman this season and you still go and get a swing tackle, next year he becomes your starter, or him and Spencer fight for the starting job, and then you figure it out from there. I think that still works, you know, to have the backup plan and to do it without taking a risk next year that you have to draft somebody who's going to start immediately. I just feel like is not the worst idea. Is the most exciting? Is the direction we thought they were going to go? No. But again, I will never complain about the Steelers building their trenches on either side of the ball. It is always the right move. Always. Whether it's top priority, second, it is always the right move to build your trenches. All right. Let's talk what everybody came here to talk about. That's the quarterback position. Over the weekend, I got some very interesting news that the Pittsburgh Steelers know who their quarterback is. They know who they want to go with. And the conversation started with the Pittsburgh Steelers are moving on from, and I was like, what? And they're like, well, no, not really. But, you know, the situation, the way we look at it is we want him. We're okay letting him walk. A team source has told All Steelers Talk that the Pittsburgh Steelers, well, they want Justin Fields. That is their choice. That is their top priority, that Justin Fields is the guy that they want in 2025 and beyond. However, it needs to come with a quote-unquote reasonable situation, which means that the Pittsburgh Steelers are not going to overpay for a quarterback this offseason, whether that's Justin Fields or Russell Wilson. Why? Because both of those guys are risks. You're risking that Justin Fields turns into nothing more than Justin Fields currently is, that he is an unproven quarterback who has a losing record in the NFL, even if he is 4-2 with you as a starter. And maybe he doesn't get any better than where he is right now, but maybe he gets way better than where he is right now. And on the other side of that, Russell Wilson is a name that is 36 years old. He'll be 37 by the end of the 2025 season. At some point, guys fall off a cliff. Father Time is undefeated in not just the NFL, but the world. And at any moment, he could catch up to Russell Wilson. That is obviously a massive risk. The Pittsburgh Steelers are not willing to take a risk at quarterback this season, not financially. It doesn't make much sense to take a risk financially at quarterback. You have too many other holes. You don't have enough cap space, and you have to figure out the rest of this team, not just your quarterback position. They have watched, and I have to give them credit for this. They have watched time and time again where teams have paid a guy that they are on way too much money, and it has come back to bite them in the butt. Whereas teams like the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, teams like the Green Bay Packers have done reasonable deals for their quarterbacks where if it works out, you get paid and the team is safe. If it doesn't work out, the team is safe and you're gone. And that is what the Pittsburgh Steelers are essentially looking to do this year with Justin Fields. With that said, we dove into Najee Harris's estimated market value with Spotrac the other day, and today it's Justin Fields. He is estimated to receive a 1-year, $6.4 million deal, which is laughable. I understand where they're coming from. I get it that they're just looking at it saying Justin Fields is a nobody who has done very little, and you're taking a shot on him. Is he going to get a boatload of money? Who knows? if I had to be realistic about the situation, I think reasonable in the Pittsburgh Steelers' eyes is somewhere around $20 million for a 1-year deal. Maybe a 2-year, anywhere from 10 to 15 in that first year, fully guaranteed. And then the second year is you could get somewhere around 25 to 30 because you've proven yourself. However, nothing's guaranteed in that second year. If you stink, it's over. You're gone. We're going to move on. The Pittsburgh Steelers want Justin Fields. I think a reasonable contract is a 2-year, I don't know, $35 million deal, $32 million, somewhere in that neighborhood where that first year is 10 to 15. The second year is anywhere from 20 to $30 million. You're guaranteed that first year. That second year, you better prove yourself in the first one. You hear that? You hear that the Pittsburgh Steelers want Justin Fields. Nothing that we haven't heard, but more so just confirmation that the Steelers know who they want. And you could talk Russell Wilson all day long, but all those reports, all that insight, I mean, according to what we are hearing, they know their guy. And now they just got to negotiate with it and figure it out. But they are optimistic about the situation. Your thoughts on Justin Fields and the contract that I laid out, and if you believe it's real.
Your contract layout is much, I could say this probably for the next 45 minutes, much more realistic with the Steelers than anything Spotrac put out, simply because Art Rooney said a week ago they don't want another 1-year deal. What they want is somebody that can take this ball and run with it for the next 2, the next 3, and maybe, if it all goes well, the next 10 if it's the right person, right? Obviously not Russ, because we're not watching 45-year-old Russell Wilson. But I think that we're both on the same page as far as if it comes down to this or that, we want Justin Fields on this show, and that contract makes all the sense in the world. I mean, Fields showed that he is coachable. Fields showed that he can still progress, and Fields showed this year that there is more than what we've seen of him in his first handful of years, especially with the Chicago Bears. They never got anywhere close to getting him to his full potential, and there's still room to grow there. So it makes sense that they say, hey, we think you're the guy, but you do have to protect your assets. You can't sit there and latch onto this guy, and then it winds up that really the only progression he had was 1 step above when you were expecting it to be 3, 4, or 5 steps. So, it makes a lot of sense for the Steelers. I personally would love to see Fields get another opportunity, and I'd love to see him be that pole position quarterback. And to be completely honest, I'd rather not hear that phrase at all and just say Justin Fields is a starting quarterback going into the summer.
Yeah, I agree. And I have been told that in different conversations, that whoever they pick, this is not a competition. Unless for some crazy reason Cam Ward falls to them in the first round, or, they're sitting there in the 5th round and Jackson Dart, Will Howard, Jalen Milroe are sitting around there going, you know what? Why not? Why don't we do this? Unless somebody comes into training camp that just blows them away, they're looking at this going, it's either Russ or it's Justin. They're our starting quarterback in 2025. Art Rooney's made that clear. From what I have been told, that has been clear the entire time. Mike Tomlin, I'm sure, will toss out a little something, because that's Mike Tomlin. It's what he does. He loves to use a word, and that word right now is pole position. He's a big pole position guy. I think it makes too much sense to be Justin. To be very honest, I get that this is a business, and you have to look at it as the business side of things if you are Justin Fields. But it makes too much sense for Justin to not leave Pittsburgh. Why would you want to leave Pittsburgh? The Steelers have made it very clear that they want to go get wide receiver help this offseason. Awesome. They have a young offensive line that has 2 first-round picks and a second-round pick, and will potentially add another first or second-round pick in this year's draft, plus a Super Bowl winning guard who just earned his first Pro Bowl. They have the pieces there. They are almost automatically getting a running back that they believe in. Great. And you have a defense that, you're always going to trust the Steelers defense heading into a season. Is it going to work out? Maybe not. But you're always going to trust it going into a season. You just aren't going to get that layout anywhere else if you're Justin Fields. You're not. Even if you go to Vegas, even if you go to some surprise team that all of a sudden says, screw it, we need a different quarterback, we're going with Justin Fields. It just doesn't make sense. You're not going to go anywhere else but Pittsburgh and have the upside, the potential that Pittsburgh is going to offer. Plus, you get Arthur Smith, who has already done this once with Ryan Tannehill, who's already turned a career around with a quarterback. Why couldn't he do it again with Justin Fields? I get it. People are down on Arthur Smith. I fully understand that. But his resume says this is a possibility. It just makes too much sense for Justin. Now it comes down to dollars. And if you're not too far off, if you are hearing, because you will hear, his agents will tell him exactly what other teams are willing to pay him. But if you're hearing the Jets are willing to offer you $20 million and the Steelers are willing to offer you 15, I'm sorry, but that $5 million in the long run is something that you take a shot on. It just makes too much sense to not take a shot on it, because either way, if you leave Pittsburgh and you never turned out to be a franchise quarterback, there's a small chance you turn into Mitch Trubisky. You know, there's a much better opportunity or shot that you just turn out to be a quarterback who doesn't turn the football over, who isn't super exciting, but people are still talking about, maybe there's some upside there in a year or 2 years. You go to the Jets, you go to the Giants, the possibility that you turn out to be Zach Wilson, that you turn out to be Trey Lance, that you turn out to be the next quarterback that the NFL has just declared done, than there is in Pittsburgh. It just makes taking a shot on yourself is always worth it in the NFL, but sometimes you have a lottery ticket in your hand, just like the Steelers do. That's my advice to Justin Fields, is the Steelers have a lottery ticket in Justin Fields that if it works out, cashes in to be a complete game changer, a franchise-changing situation, because that's what a franchise quarterback does. And for Justin, it's a lottery ticket to say, this isn't money, this isn't guaranteed, but this is by far the best opportunity that I could possibly have in front of me as a guy that the NFL has somewhat washed away, that did not work out with the first team. Maybe it works out, maybe it doesn't. Who knows? But I just think that both sides, it just makes too much sense to sit here and say, I'm nothing but optimistic that the Steelers will land Justin Fields in 2025. And we're just kind of waiting on it. I don't know when it's going to happen. I don't even know if they've spoken, but that is where the Pittsburgh Steelers stand on both sides of things. All right, let's transition now. Let's finish off our agenda. Tee Higgins has been the name we've talked about all offseason. It has been the name we talked about most of the regular season and the playoffs. And it will be the name that we talk about until a pen goes to paper and he either signs with the Pittsburgh Steelers, is franchise tagged by the Cincinnati Bengals, or ends up somewhere else, all of which are possibilities. Jeremy Fowler has released what he is expected to be the contract for Tee Higgins. Speaking with NFL executives across the league, he has come up with the over-under of $30 million, which we have laid out on this show. But he says that if he had to guess, the contract is looking somewhat like Devontae Smith's of the Philadelphia Eagles, which he signed, I believe, a year ago. 3 years, $75 million, which is really not the craziest situation in the world. I expect it to be closer to 90. 3 years, $90 million. But if we're under $100 million for Tee Higgins, the Pittsburgh Steelers don't give up a boatload of guaranteed. I bet you $20 million of that money is guaranteed. Maybe $35 million is guaranteed. I'm signing that deal tomorrow, and I'm feeling very okay with that situation. The Steelers need a wide receiver. There is no better option in both the NFL draft and free agency than Tee Higgins. He comes with, plenty of experience in the AFC North, so he already knows how to beat the Ravens. He already knows how to beat the Browns. He knows how to beat the Steelers. And, well, now he can learn how to beat the Bengals. It just seems to be if you are in the AFC North and you stick with an AFC North team, there is a confidence level there. Does it always work out? No. But sometimes it does. And sometimes it's awesome to watch it work out. Tee Higgins remains the top option in my eyes. And I don't know if I trust 3 years, $75 million. I think it's more 3 years, $90 million. But I feel pretty okay about that contract if it's 3 years, 90. And even if it's year 1 is 28, year 2 is 32, and year 3 is 30, I'd be okay with that. And I'd feel pretty confident about a 26-year-old wide receiver that has so much career left and probably 5 years before you're even worried about him declining. You got him for 3, great. Figure it out in 3. Tee Higgins, I mean, I'll ask you the 3-year, $75 million. Is that where you stand in this situation?
If this was a Cincinnati Bengals podcast, yeah, because I think that's the price tag for the Bengals. He has said on a couple of occasions that he's willing to take a pay cut to stay in Cincinnati. And I think that's the pay cut that we're talking about here. 3 years, $75 million, which makes a lot of sense when comparing it to Devontae Smith, because he did that to stay in Philly next to A.J. Brown. So if you're the Bengals, 3 years, 75, what you're talking about is the free agency tax, is the, hey, I'm no longer playing with Joe Burrow. I need to insure another $15 million on my next deal. So I agree with you in that aspect, but I also look at Tee Higgins as a guy that the Steelers have no one else to pay, right? You're going to have to pay your quarterback 100% this offseason, but on offense, who else are you paying? You paid Pat Freiermuth already. Your offensive line is all young and all a couple of years away from needing an extension. Who else do you have? And what other position is going to make the biggest impact? You need multiple receivers. I understand you're going to need a running back, but as we've talked about ad nauseum, the running back class this year has plenty of options that are going to be able to step in on day one and form a very solid 1-2 punch alongside Jaylen Warren, who's also not going to cost you very much to bring back. So you have nobody else to pay. You're willing to pay Brandon Ayuk $30+ million and whatever you had to trade away to get him last offseason. Why wouldn't you be willing to go there and maybe even a little bit higher to ensure that you actually secure a capable wide receiver in this year's free agency class? So 3 years, 75 to me is a pipe dream unless your name is the Cincinnati Bengals. 3 years, 90 makes a lot of sense. But again, I think if you're the Steelers, you're going to be a little bit more desperate knowing that you went through all of last year and came away with Mike Williams, who was decent, but not utilized and not trusted enough by the offensive staff. I think you go out and you pay a little bit more than what the going rate would be for most other teams.
Yeah, and I agree with that, but I agree with that. I think if you're the Steelers, you're willing to budge, and it works out. Like, people will say, well, they were only offering Ayuk $27 million a year, that's what I was told too. They weren't going 30. It was $27 million, $28 million max. Okay, they were giving up a 2nd-round pick for the guy. Like, in this situation, you're not giving up any compensation, and you're paying $4 million extra a year. That's okay. You're okay in that situation. I also think that just like the Justin Fields situation, Tee Higgins is going to have a boatload of options, but at some point you have to weigh what are you looking for? Are you looking for $31 million a year, an extra $1 million, an extra $2 million a year to go play for the Patriots, to go play for the Titans, to go play for, unless the Chiefs offer you $30 million, which they could offer you 25, and I'm going to the Chiefs every single time. If your options are Tennessee, if your options are the Jets, if your options are the Raiders, if your options are the New England Patriots, which have all been floated as possibilities, the Steelers hold an upper hand there. For $2 million a year, you have an actual shot to compete in the playoffs. You're going to win games. You have a quarterback in place with Justin Fields, because there's no chance. This changes if it's Russell Wilson, but there's no chance the Steelers are going to do all this before they choose a quarterback. That will be priority one. They've already let it be known that it's priority one, but they will have a quarterback in place. You will have a young quarterback that I guarantee you Tee Higgins is excited about. I have a hard time believing young wide receivers who went to college the same time Justin Fields went to college are saying, this guy stinks. I can't believe that I'm playing with Justin Fields. No, they're going to be like, Justin Fields ain't bad, man. Justin Fields ain't bad. He's pretty good. I think that there's also that luxury of being the Steelers where, should you be willing to overpay for Tee Higgins? Certainly. But at some point, the players on their side have to look at this and say, that's my best option if I'm trying to win a Super Bowl. That's my best. even if you are the Raiders, the Patriots are the best of the group there by far, but they're not Super Bowl bound. They're not playoff bound in the next 2 years. They have to build an entire offensive line. They have no running back. They have one wide receiver in Tee Higgins, if it's him. They have 7 tight ends that are all over the age of 30, and their defense is literally non-existent outside of Keon White, who has made it known he doesn't know if he's coming back, and Christian Gonzalez. That is your entire defense. It just feels like it's just a gap. There's a gap between now, you could get the Mahomes calling you. You can get the Ravens calling you. You could get these teams that are saying, we'll pay 27. At that point, you've lost. The Steelers have lost. But if it's you and a bunch of bad teams, offer them as close to the contract as you can get if you're not willing to overpay, and then see if that's enough, And if he says, no, I'm going for the money, all right, overpay him. That's fine. But I think that you have a bargaining chip there as Pittsburgh, just because there are no good options out there. And we've seen it in the past where wide receivers have gone to bad teams, and then a year in, 2 years in, they're going, all right, trade me. I got to go somewhere good. I can't be here any longer with this really bad team. It happens constantly. I would imagine it happens again. So I agree with you. I'm overpaying for Tee Higgins, but my first bargain is, hey, I'll give you $30 million. If the Patriots are offering you 32, I'll give you $30 million, and you could come to us and actually try to win, because in 3 years that window just opened for the Patriots. Good.
Yeah. That argument is simply, you can go to a bad team and be on a bad team. You can go to a good team and make less money. You can come to a mediocre team in Pittsburgh and make them an elite team and get paid more money. That is your. If you're Omar Khan, that's your pitch. You're like, hey, you can go to a bad team, they're gonna suck. If you go to us, you're going to get the money, and you might be able to actually play for a contending team because you're going to make them a contending team. Now, whether he believes that or not depends on how he views the Steelers, and it depends on how you view the Steelers as the listener whenever I'm talking about this. But that's the bargaining chip. That's the sale. If you're Omar Khan, you're saying, hey, listen, we think that we're missing only a few pieces, and you're one of the biggest pieces that we're missing. If you come here, we'll pay you like it, and you'll get treated like it. If you go somewhere else, Kansas City has kind of made sure that they're just going to be the island of misfit toys and wide receiver, and it works, right? They brought in Rashee Rice. He's the future. Okay, well, things happen. That's fine. Xavier Worthy is now the future. They're just going to recycle through. Hey, Juju's going to be great in this game, going to disappear for 9 weeks, but that's all right, because DeAndre Hopkins is going to come in, or Hollywood Brown's going to come in. They don't need a star receiver. So I think that's your selling point. If you're Omar Khan, is like, listen, we're a mediocre team that needs a good receiver to become closer to being an elite team. You could be that guy and still get paid for it.
Exactly. Perfect middle ground with some upside. And I just think it works out well for the Steelers if they're willing to pay, which they are. If the Steelers walk away, and at the end of this, reports come out that the Pittsburgh Steelers offered Tee Higgins $27 million a year. I mean, there's nothing to do but sit here and blame the Pittsburgh Steelers and say, you did this to yourself. You deserve to fail. That's what you've done, because the opportunity's in front of you. Go grab it and stop being cheap. Try to win some damn games. And that's where the Steelers should be this offseason. All right. That's everything on our agenda. We're going to finish off the show the same way we do every single day, by answering all your questions. But first, we got a quick word from our boys over at DraftKings. Super Bowl 59 is right around the corner, and it's the perfect time to get in on the action with my partners at DraftKings Sportsbook. Right now, they're giving all new customers $200 in bonus bets instantly after betting just $5. This is your shot to make every last play a moment to be remembered. Don't wait. Download the DraftKings app now and sign up using our code ALLSTEELERS. The crown is yours. Stay in on the action and use your $200 in bonus bets on DraftKings same game parlays for a shot at an even bigger payout. Combine multiple bets together, from the same game. I do it all the time. Love the thrill of live betting? DraftKings has got you covered. Bet live on in-progress games right as they happen, making watching the game that much more exciting. If sports betting is not yet available in your state, don't worry. You can still join in on all the fun with DraftKings Daily Fantasy and have the shot to win cash prizes. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. New customers use my promo code ALLSteelers and bet just $5 on any wager and get $200 in bonus bets instantly. That's promo code ALLSteelers only at DraftKings Sportsbook. Shout out our boys over at DraftKings. All right, we're going to finish off the show the same way we do every. I'm going to let it catch up here for a second. Every single day, it's the computer updates. Man, they smoke you. They smoke you. You got a whole week. You have 1 week of chaos before your computer's like, no, we're good. We're chilling. We're back. And then it just starts slowing down again. So shout out to MacBooks. All right. We're going to finish off the show the same way we do every single day. We're going to dive into all of your questions. So make sure that you toss them in the chat. We'll get to all of them before we head out of here. Nick, what do we got?
Yeah, let's kick things off with Potatoes Salad. Appreciate you as always. Says, good morning, guys. Your sleeper quarterback picks in this year's draft.
Yeah, I'll give you two of them. One of them I don't like. One of them I am okay with. My one that I don't like is Dillon Gabriel. I think Dillon Gabriel is a guy that has more potential in this NFL draft than Jalen Milroe, than Will Howard, not than Jackson Dart. Jackson Dart's got decent. Than Riley Leonard. All of the names that everybody's talking about constantly. I think Dillon Gabriel outperforms, plays better than, has better accuracy, is more mobile. I like Dillon Gabriel. My problem is that Dillon Gabriel is not a first-round quarterback. He is not a starting quarterback in the NFL, and you are not making your backup quarterback a lefty. That is just not going to happen because it doesn't make any sense. You have to completely turn your entire offense backwards the second he steps into a football game. That's chaos. That is pure chaos. You want communication issues. You want people to freak out. You want things to look wrong. Put a lefty out there in the middle of the third quarter when Justin Fields, gets banged up or has to come out to get checked for a concussion or something, and watch just complete chaos go down for however long he has to be out there. Dillon Gabriel is my first one. My second one is Kyle McCord out of Syracuse. I kind of like him. I don't think he's the greatest. I don't think he sits there with the Will Howards. I don't think he sits there with the Jackson Darts. But I do think that as a backup quarterback who has experience at, big programs, he's somebody who I'd take a shot on late in the draft and say, yeah, maybe he turns out to be a good backup quarterback. Maybe he does develop into a long-term number two. And I feel like that's a name, that's a risk that teams are going to be willing to take. In this year's draft, I think he would sit exactly in the same spot as next year's draft or a good draft that he would this year's draft, because I feel he's better than Spencer Rattler. I feel like he's got more upside than a lot of these guys that go in the middle to late rounds of the draft and normal drafts. So even though it's a down year at quarterback, I still think Kyle McCord sits pretty much right where he deserves to sit. I would take a shot on Kyle McCord. I like Kyle McCord.
All right, let's jump over to Loswald, who says, Nick and Noah, who are your later round gems that you see in this upcoming draft / late round targets for the Steelers?
Jimmy Horn is the guy to watch right now, right? That is the name that everybody should be paying attention to. It's tough it's early. Okay. It's tough to get those guys late in the draft where you're saying, this is the name to watch. These are the sleepers, unless the Steelers want them. Typically, once you get to the combine, you have a pretty good sense of where the Steelers are headed in the first round. And then you could go later in the draft and start saying, all right, they want these guys. Last year it was the Joe Milton. Last year was the Steelers love Joe Milton. That's their guy. I don't know who it's going to be this year. Right now it's Jimmy Horn. And I would be pumped about Jimmy Horn coming to the Steelers in like the 6th round of the NFL draft.
Shout out to Brady Mercury checking in for the first time live from Chicago. Took work off and finally caught one live. I hope you didn't take one work off to catch this live. But thanks for tuning in.
Yeah, I definitely appreciate it. I agree with Nick, dude. I hope that you did not say I'm calling off to watch some All Steelers talk today. If you did, very appreciated, my brother. But, that's awesome. That's awesome. Thank you.
Let's go to Kevin, who says, did the Steelers have a shot at signing Juju last season? And if not, why didn't they sign him?
They did have a shot. I was actually told, and we talked about it a little bit on the show, I believe, over the summer, that Juju emerged as an option for the Pittsburgh Steelers in the middle of the Brandon Ayuk saga, but they wanted to get a deal done with the 49ers. They looked at the 49ers as like, we have to hammer this out. We have to get it. Juju was the fallback option. Juju ends up going to Kansas City, and the Steelers miss out on him. So they were interested in Juju. They looked at Juju as a reliable number 2, maybe a reliable number 3, but they wanted to figure out the 49ers trade, and it came back to bite them in the butt. They waited too long. They got screwed over at the end, and they missed out on every other option because they were strung up on one name.
Let's go to Pittsburgh Hornets, who says, hey, instead of the Pro Bowl, what about a bowl game for fourth stringers, practice squad guys, and unsigned players, like a mini minor league bowl?
I actually love this idea. I think this would be awesome to just say, like, hey, every team selects their top 3 practice squad guys, and you send them to the Pro Bowl to play in an actual game where scouts and everything get an opportunity to say, these are the dudes we want. That I love that idea, actually. I think that would be awesome. I'll tell you right now, John Rice Plumlee would have won MVP. Easy. And they can't be veterans. That's my other thing. You can't be a guy. There has to be limits on it has to be like old school practice squad rules where like Steven Nelson's on a practice squad. He can't play in this game. He's done it. He's been in the league too long. He's been playing too many games. We need the John Rice Plumlees. We need the Darius Rushes. We need whoever the other guys, the big names on the practice squads out there. But I love this idea.
Let's jump to Kip's Cards, who says, do you have any sponsorship packages? I would love to be a sponsor for you all, but also, how realistic is it that Justin Fields develops into a B+ passer this offseason?
I mean, I'm not going to say it's unrealistic. I'm not going to bank on it, but I definitely think it's in the realm of possibilities that Justin improves into a pretty good quarterback. I look at Justin Fields as a guy who has an opportunity to be a franchise quarterback. And I know that is shooting for the stars, but he's a guy who has the possibility to be a massive addition to the Pittsburgh Steelers. That's who Justin Fields is. And he has the possibility to be an absolute bust and worth no money and not make it in Pittsburgh or anywhere else in the NFL. But I mean, this is not going to get Jarrett Stidham. This is not going to get Mitch Trubisky. This is not re-signing Mason Rudolph. This is a guy who a lot of teams believed in, who the Chicago Bears picked 11th in the NFL draft, who has never really had a real opportunity to shine in the NFL, who looked pretty decent last year. I think that's definitely a possibility that he could become a B+ passer. As for the sponsorship packages, hit me up on social media or email us at allsteelerstalk@gmail.com, and we'll definitely talk.
Let's go to Vibin with the Dogs, who says, so hypothetically, if the Steelers do take Zabel and cut Isaac Seumalo, do you put Mason McCormick back at his natural left guard spot and put Zabel at right guard, or do you just throw Zabel in at left?
So I think either way, the Steelers will consider it. But Zabel, what's good about Zabel is he's played both guard and tackle spots, I'm pretty sure, in college. Like, he's played both sides of the ball. So he probably does have the versatility to be a right guard and then have McCormick go to the left guard spot. This year would be the deciding factor if the Steelers went that direction. If Isaac Seumalo sticks around, Mason McCormick is a right guard for life. That is what he is, at least in the city of Pittsburgh. And then Zabel would become your left guard. I also think it's a possibility that maybe Zabel's a tackle and Troy Fautanu is a guard at some point in his NFL career. But I think the smoothest way to go about this, if Seumalo was cut, would be which I don't know if CML is going to be cut. I didn't hear any of that. That is just hypothetical talk. Is to move McCormick to the right side or to the left side, excuse me, and make Zabel your right guard.
Let's go to Richard, who says, Noah and Nick, why wouldn't the Steelers have picked up Najee's option if they truly were not interested in him moving forward, and then just use that option to trade him for draft capital?
Yeah, that's way trickier than you think it is. Most of the time it doesn't work out. That's why everybody pitches the tag and trade, but there's almost never a tag and trade in the NFL. It just doesn't seem to, nobody's interested in that. Nobody's looking to give up draft capital for a guy that they get for 1 year, and you're not going to get a lot of draft capital for it. So it just becomes very difficult. I mean, obviously Najee would have came with a smaller cap hit in 2025, but the team would still have to extend him. They'd be taking a shot on him. It just, chances are that wouldn't work out. It almost never does in the NFL. Instead, they're just gonna let him walk. But I also look at it as the Steelers are taking a shot in their own eyes, saying if Najee doesn't get signed to massive money, they could get him back for cheap. And I think that was the risk they were willing to take.
All right, let's go to Pittsburgh Hornets, who wants a call with Noah Stradamus and says, if you had to call your shot, what date would you expect a signing at quarterback?
Ooh, an actual signing. I would say, honestly, I think we know the situation. I think we know what's going to happen right around the Super Bowl. They could sign an extension right before that. I'm almost positive that that they could ink an extension. I'm gonna shoot my shot and say before the end of February. If they really wanted to screw me, it'd be on Valentine's Day. But I would say the week after the Super Bowl is my earliest guess. It's a complete guess, but that's where I stand. And that just determines, that's based on how quickly conversations go, how smoothly negotiations are between the two sides. That's how I view this. But it would not surprise me if it goes right up until just before free agency.
Let's go to John, who says, as far as running backs go, I haven't heard Dylan Sampson's name really mentioned that often. At 5'11", 190, and a 4.35 speed, do you think he could be an option if he falls to round 4?
I do think Sampson could be an option for the Steelers. He is a speedy guy. I'm worried about his size. He's a little small for a guy that you're going to pair with Jaylen Warren if that's the situation that you're looking at if you're the Steelers. I look at it more as you get a bigger dude who's, 205, 210, maybe 220. You have that 1-2 punch that you're looking for. I like Sampson. I think the Steelers go running back well before the 4th, though.
All right, let's jump down to Pittsburgh Hornets again, who says, out of the new head coaches around the NFL, who has the worst season next year?
Who are the head coaches? Pete Carroll.
I'm going
Mike Vrabel.
For this one, I'm going Mike Vrabel. I mean, I think he's a good head coach, and I like Drake May, but again, you mentioned it earlier. Who else is on that team? It's Drake May, Christian Gonzalez, and their band of merry men. So even though Mike Vrabel's a good coach, I don't think he's a miracle worker. I think all the new coaches, he probably has the worst year.
You want to know who my guess is? Liam Cohen or whoever, whatever.
You don't trust in him?
Do you trust in him?
I mean, that's what he did with Baker Mayfield. As a coach, as a public speaker, no, I don't trust in him. But as a coach, that's what he did with Baker Mayfield. So you never know. You never know.
I just think I think Jacksonville is well behind the 8 ball. He's walking in there to a quarterback and some much worse wide receivers than he had in Tampa. And I also think that the dude's a little shady, man. Like it brings me.
Well, the way he handled it, yeah,
it makes me worried. Like I don't know. I'm not sold on him. I would guess it would not surprise me if it's him. But I hear you on the Patriots.
All right, let's go to Mariana, who says, hello from Australia. Or
Hey.
sorry, Austria. My bad. Austria. Any news on the Ireland game? I really hope it happens. It would be my first Steelers game.
That would be awesome. I hope it happens for you as well. I have been told that it's almost a definite that it is happening. They're going to announce it on a Saturday. Most likely this Saturday, to be honest. I would guess that the Steelers announce it maybe this week, but I was told it's coming on a Saturday. I think that that's a shot in the dark from whoever told me, but I would believe it's coming on a Saturday, potentially this Saturday. And what I've heard as well is it will be the Green Bay Packers and the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Steelers will be declared the home game. That's what the expectation is right now. Right. And I hope you enjoy it. And shout out from Austria.
Let's go to J Chaps Snacks Review, who says, do you consider it a failure if the Steelers don't land a free agent wide receiver, but come back with George as the number 1 and draft a rookie in the first round?
Yeah, I do consider that a failure. I really do. Like, I don't think the Steelers have room to take any shots at that position. You don't have a risk to take. And I get it. First round wide receiver, big name, could develop into something. Definitely. But there's also a shot that there is a learning curve. There's also a shot that that guy doesn't turn into what you want it to turn into. I mean, if your options are, I think it's a failure if the Pittsburgh Steelers go out there and get George Pickens and, I don't know, Amari Cooper, but don't get anybody else. I think it's a failure if the Steelers go out there and get, I don't even know who else is a free agent that is like below that, because my brain shuts off after like Christian Kirk, Chris Godwin, Tee Higgins. Anything below that line is like, what are we doing here? But that's how I look at it, is you have to have essentially another George Pickens on your roster heading into the summer. You can't take a shot that you can't, because what if Roman Wilson isn't the guy? Then you have Calvin Austin, a rookie, and George Pickens. I mean, it's better than what you had, but nothing's bulletproof there. I would consider it a failure. Yes. I think you have to go get a big name wide receiver, and then you have to draft one. I agree with that too. Also, wide receivers are the most likely to bust of any position. So you're taking a shot. You're taking a risk. I don't think it's worth it.
All right, let's go to John, who says, is Higgins at $30 million per season a better value than, say, signing Christian Kirk and Darius Slayton combined for 30? Keep in mind, Christian Kirk has 1 year left on his current deal at $24 million as a cap hit.
Yeah, but I would imagine he does get cut. Yeah. No, I still think that signing Tee Higgins is more valuable. You don't need 2 guys. You just need 1. You need George Pickens and Tee Higgins, and let Calvin Austin cook in the middle and hope Roman Wilson turns into something. There's your 4. You want to go draft a wide receiver in the first 3 rounds. There's your 5. You bring back Ben Skoranek. There's your 6. Beautiful. I like that a lot more than if the Steelers walked into next season with George Pickens, Christian Kirk, and Darius Slayton. Good. Don't get me wrong. Very improved from last year. There's nothing about that screams the Steelers. They did it, man. They balled out. It would essentially be the Steelers signing Isaac Seumalo and James Daniels, where everybody said, okay, yeah, you definitely got better, you know? But like, did you make the splash everybody thought you were going to make? No. That's how I look at that.
All right, let's go to J Chaps Snacks Review again, who says, do you think having an absolute stud running back is better than having an explosive wide receiver room?
I think you need both. I think you need both. You can't just rely on your running game, and you can't just rely on your passing game. You just can't. Look at all of the offenses that are really good in the NFL. All of them. You can even look at Kansas City's. Xavier Worthy's a stud, and yeah, you could name whoever you want as their number 1 wide receiver. You want to know who their number 1 wide receiver is? Travis Kelce, who is a stud wide receiver, explosive running game, or stud at running back, and Isaiah Pacheco. The Eagles are the same way. Arthur Smith's last offense with Derrick Henry, A.J. Brown, and Corey Davis, like studs, explosive wide receivers. So you look at all these guys. I mean, Baltimore, they got Zay Flowers, they got Rashad Bateman, like they have Mark Andrews. So the Steelers need that. The Steelers need that. And I think Pat Freiermuth helps in that equation, but I think you need both.
All right, let's go to Kenneth Jackson, who says, good day, gentlemen. Should the strategy be to use free agency for a wide receiver and a cornerback, and then draft defensive tackle, defensive interior, and running back? You can still address the same needs in the draft, but not early.
Yeah, I think that does work. I do think that works. I would go after wide receiver in free agency. I would also, I think re-signing Dante Jackson is an okay move that puts you in a safe spot on defense. You definitely need to draft some defensive tackles, probably 2. You definitely need to draft a running back. The class is way too loaded not to draft a running back. Easy. I do think you need to draft a wide receiver. And I also think that you need to draft a corner. I don't know when, and I agree with you. Like, you could address these things later in the draft. I would be okay if the Steelers used a second-round pick on a corner after signing Dante Jackson. I would. But I like the strategy. I think if you go wide receiver and corner in the draft or in the free agency, it gives you some leeway to attack the trenches in the running back game in the NFL draft.
So those are the positions you like. Let's go to Logan's question, which is, what positions would you hate to see the Steelers take early in this year's draft? It always seems like they have a clear set of needs in the draft, but sometimes they steer off course.
They do definitely steer off course. Positions that I hate in this year's draft starts with quarterback. They are terrible. You have Shedeur Sanders, Salmer Sam, Cam Ward. I wouldn't be surprised if this turns into a Kenny Pickett draft where Malik Willis looks good 2 years from now on a different offense for one game and people are freaking out. That's a real expectation. I think the wide receiver class is good, but I don't necessarily love it. They have a couple of good options up the front. I think the fall off is pretty drastic. I don't like the inside linebacker draft really at all. I also think that the corner draft is a little thin. It's kind of like wide receiver. It's top heavy. It's got those big 5 names right at the front there. Did you see the mock draft the other day where the Steelers got Will Johnson? Like,
I did not see that.
Yeah,
that was crazy.
Wild. I was like, I think it was NFL.com, to be honest, that came out with the mock draft. I was like, what are we doing here? How did that even, do you know all the mistakes that need to happen before Will Johnson ends up in Pittsburgh? Corner, I think, is a little thin. Quarterback is terrible. I'm not totally sold on the linebackers in this one, the inside linebackers. And I also think that wide receiver is top heavy, but I think it thins out later in the draft.
Let's jump down to Justin Gordon. Appreciate you. Justin says, if I'm Saquon Barkley, Derrick Henry, or Jones, I don't touch grass in 2025 for anything under $15 million. There is no way that Christian McCaffrey is $5 to $10 million better. I think Najee gets $12 million a year from the Raiders.
Oh, I don't think Najee gets $12 million. Who are we thinking is Jones? Aaron Jones?
Aaron Jones.
I don't think Najee gets 12. I mean, maybe if they're willing to overpay. Najee is definitely a class below Saquon, Derrick Henry, and I think Aaron Jones is a class below those guys too. But Saquon should get paid Christian McCaffrey money. There's no question there. Derrick Henry, I think, is just happy to be still Derrick Henry, and he's just trying to win a Super Bowl at this point in his career. But I hear where you're coming from. I think Najee right at that $9-10 million mark is where he should be. I do. I feel like that's a good spot for Najee Harris. I think it's a good price tag. I think he's got a lot of miles on him. He's reliable, definitely, but we don't know if Najee Harris turns out to be anything better than 1,000 yards, than just 1,000 yards, averaging 4 yards a carry. We don't know if that turns out to be anything better, which is great. But if you're getting 60 yards a game, it's not the best. So I'm interested to see what he does on another offense. I think 9 to 10 million. I could see the Raiders overpaying him, but I think $9 to $10 million is a good price tag for him.
All right, we got a couple left here. Let's go to DK the Yinzer to start this. Says, is Cameron Scadaboo an option for us in the draft? I just want to give you the platform to continue to gush over your favorite.
Cam Scadaboo is one of my dudes this year in the draft. I don't think he turns out to be an absolute stud. I think that there's an opportunity that he turns out to be a, Will Shipley in the NFL draft. But I also think that there's an opportunity for him to be way too slow and to turn into a fullback 2 years into the league, which is okay in my eyes. Like, you want to become a fullback? Awesome. Fullbacks are very needed in today's NFL, whether people want to acknowledge it or not. Some great fullbacks help their wide receivers. I love Cam Scadaboo. If you're going to draft him in the 6th round, I'm all about it. I think when I started this, it was like, get him in the 3rd, get him in the 4th. Where I'm at now is a little bit more realistic, and we're deeper into the draft evaluation, which means that I've understood my mistakes and my overreactions. And I like Cam Scadaboo. I think he's good. I think unless he runs like a 4.5 at the NFL Combine, he is a very late round pick.
All right. Well, welcome back to Earth, Noah. I'm glad to have you. Let's go to Yinzer Joe, who says, if the Steelers have their quarterback and they draft well, do you think they can beat out the Ravens for the division next season?
Yes, I do. They should have beat the Ravens out for the division this season. I hear where you're coming from. Definitely. Yeah, I do think that's a possibility. I am a guy that does not, I'm very realistic about the situation. I do not think the Steelers are a Super Bowl contender in 2025, at least not where we stand right now. A crazy offseason can change my mind, but it's got to be nuts. I do not think the Steelers are a Super Bowl contender in 2025 where we stand today. I do think that a good running back, a good quarterback, and one wild wide receiver accusation, could totally change things. But I look at the Pittsburgh Steelers the same way I look at the Pittsburgh Steelers every single season. This team is not going to lose more than 8 games. They're just not. And if you can win 11, which we don't know what the schedule exactly looks like, but it's not the hardest schedule in the world. It's definitely not this year's schedule unless they screw them and do the same thing that they did last year, which is definitely a very real possibility that they do that. But I look at, and to be honest, it's a possibility. But the way I look at it is if I'm the NFL, that's not a product I'm putting out there anymore. I'm not putting the Steelers on Christmas Day to get their butt whooped again. I'm trying to get a better game than Steelers Chiefs that would have been awesome. They don't care. Nobody cares anymore. Even Hard Knocks. Did you watch Hard Knocks by the end of it?
Yeah.
No. Okay.
I did. But I'm a sicko.
I did not. I was like, nah, this is not as enjoyable as it was. I unless they get totally screwed on the schedule, I could see the Steelers winning 10 games, 11 games next year. I don't think that makes them a Super Bowl contender, but I do think they could pull off the AFC North.
Let's go to a little clarification here from Justin. Said Josh Jacobs, not Aaron Jones.
Yeah, dude. Jacobs 100%. Definitely in the same class as Saquon and Derrick Henry. I agree with that one. I don't know what his contract is. I think it's like $12 million. It should definitely be 15.
Let's finish it off with Darian, who says, I know it's AST, but what the heck is going on in the NBA right now?
I woke up to that one and it was wild. I will say though that people hate me for this, man, but I'm a LeBron guy. I've always been a LeBron guy since I'm a little kid. I'm a LeBron guy. So I'm pumped about it. I'm pumped. Like I would love to see LeBron go out on top, win it, walk away, him and Luka. It would be great. I'm just saying, I'm not a Lakers guy, but I'm a LeBron guy, and I have pushed my Lakers aside for this, and I'm okay with it.
Yeah, I was still awake when that happened, and I was like, there's no way. Like I must be hallucinating that happened. And then the last thing we'll close off with is, did you see the screenshot that Luka posted of his missed calls? It was the GM of the Mavs like 15 times. And in the middle there, it said big 2-3 with a purple and a yellow heart. And I was like, wow, I like that. I like that a lot.
That's crazy, actually. No, I did not see that. That is what, could you imagine like going to bed, waking up, you're on the Lakers? Like, because you got traded at 1 a.m. Wild times. Why? Plus, also, the Lakers literally finished a game like 20 minutes before that happened. LeBron was like, oh, this might be my last game at Madison Square Garden. And Anthony Davis was getting the phone call that he was gone. Like, that is the emotions that had to be going on in that 3-hour span. Absolutely nuts. So, shout out. I'm excited. We'll see what happens.
That's a wrap for today, then.
Awesome. With that said, guys, we are heading out of here. Thank you so much for jumping on to another episode of All Steelers Talk. Make sure to subscribe to us on YouTube, youtube.com/All Steelers Talk. Check us out anywhere you get your podcasts. And as always, find all our work at si.com/NFL/Steelers. We will be back tomorrow. Enjoy another beautiful day in the Berg. Peace.